The views that hit the news. NRA. Now, business have just over a year to prepare itself to pay a 20 rand an hour minimum wage. Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa describes the agreement as a starting point to lift some 6 million workers out of poverty and inequality. These people, we understand, earn less than 3,500 rand a month. Deputy President Ramaphosa has noted that the gap between the sectoral determination wages will move closer to the national minimum wage over the next 2 years. This as it emerged this week that workers on a wine farm in Wellington are being paid between 6 rand and 10 rand a day. The farm owned by Skalk Burger Sr., the father of the former Springbok captain, had been paying his workers under 100 rand for a 7-day week. The workers are all permanently employed and live on the farm and they protested earlier this week. Burger initially claimed that it was an accounting error, and later went on to change his tune. This is but one example of how workers are underpaid currently at the moment. Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa speaking yesterday.
Those who employ domestic workers should pay up to 75% of the minimum wage, and we're giving them a period of 2 years. When it comes to farm workers, we're saying they should be at 90% for 2 years. That is the lead-in period that farm employers are given to lead up. And now, if it gets to a point where they still cannot pay, there is an allowance for exemption application.
Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa speaking there yesterday. Now, to take further this discussion around a minimum wage, let's welcome Dennis George. He is from the Federation of Unions of South Africa, FEDUSA. Also online with us is Gerhard Papenfus, who is with the National Employers Association of South Africa. Gerhard, I'd like to start off with you. Your initial take on the 20 rand an hour minimum wage agreement. Is there something that business is willing to accommodate?
Good morning, Tashreeq. Good morning to the listeners, and hello, Dennis.
Good morning.
Tashreeq, an amount of 3,500, and I think the 20 rand will take it closer to 4,000, is still a small amount of money. Let's not make no mistake about it. It's still a small amount of money. But the thing is, we're told that 56% of, that's what the Commission said, 56% of workers are still earning less than that. So the point here is that in respect of 56% of employees, employers somewhere will have to make an adjustment. And the question is, can they make it? Now, on the one hand, we'd say it's a small amount of money, but for an employer, if it's a very small employer, if it's an upcoming employer, it might still not be possible. So that's where the danger lies. A lot of employers pay far beyond that in any event. So that will have no effect in that. So we're talking about those that's earning less. And of course, there will be those that can make the
adjustment,
adaptation, the improvement, and then there will be others that won't be able. And we're talking about those employees in those areas which might be affected. Some employees will simply continue. Some will go underground, and in some cases, it may lead to dismissal. So, and I think the question is, can we really afford that? I mean, there are millions and millions of workers unemployed, low skilled, and what we're doing here perhaps is to set a barrier to entry to the market.
Right. Let's put that to Dennis. Let's put that to Dennis. Are we cutting off our noses here to spite our faces by imposing this 20 rand an hour minimum wage?
No, look, what we've done, I mean, we spent almost 2 years on this particular thing, and this is not an easy thing for NEDLAC to deal with. And just to take one step back, I mean, as labor, which Kusatu, FEDUSA, NATU, we actually wanted, to have a minimum wages of 4,500 rand. And government were offering something less than that, and business were even saying, look, they can't afford those amounts. And I mean, we grappled with this thing for Saturdays and Sundays. My wife actually thought, that.
Like
into the problems, But what I wanted to say is this. The panel of experts made a recommendation, and what they also recommended, apart from the 20 rand and the 3 rand 50 cents, they also said if a small business finds it unaffordable to pay the wages at that particular level, then the process will help them to apply for an exemption. You see? And we're also giving firms a long head time. We're saying, look, this thing is going to be implemented from 2018, from the 1st of May. And when come the 1st of May, companies comes to us and say, look, here's my evidence, I can't afford. Then they will be exempted. So we don't want, to put companies in such a position that they must now tell workers they have to retrench them. That is the last thing that we want to do.
All right, I just want to pick up with Gerhard on how, for instance, businesses that can afford it, that don't necessarily fork out that requisite amount of money. That it seems to workers that business in this country has a reputation for underpaying their workers. Gerhard?
No, that is not true. I mean, to generalize and say business has a reputation to underpay is not true. I mean, we compete. If you compete with a manufacturer paid in China, in Kenya, let alone China. China is no longer a low payer. But in Africa, just across our borders, you'll find that our wages are actually very high. And the fact of the matter is, you manufacture and you compete with other people. Now, so to say that we've got a reputation for low wages, let's say all employers in the world then has a reputation, but that's what market powers does. So what people can do, if they are forced to make a decision, and you mentioned a wine farmer, but there are other examples. If a guy says, all right, you pay more, he can mechanize. And strangely enough, and we're talking about the situation in the chicken industry now, where the minister has said, but they must mechanize. Do you know what it means, minister? If people mechanize, people lose their jobs. So they can mechanize. And there are examples, which I do not want to go into detail now, where the employer says, I can buy a tractor to do the work of 6 low-paid workers. So if you force me to pay more, I'll simply buy that tractor, and it will cost me much less. So be careful that this might have consequences. So it's one thing to say we have this. Employers pay what they can afford. They pay what is economically viable, and at the end they pay what they want. And if you go beyond that,
Gerhard,
it's just unfair.
Yeah, Gerhard, we're going to have to round up. I just want to get your reaction, Dennis, very quickly on this. Employers pay what they can afford. In your research, in your years of, unionizing, is this what you've come across?
Yeah, look, the point is basically this. We have opened up the system now. So people say they can afford to buy tractors, but they can't afford to pay their workers. You see, we don't want to argue like that. What we want to say is this, is that people, we're living in a democracy. We've also made provision, apart from the exemption, we've also introduced an incentive scheme to provide support, especially for small businesses, because we know they are the most of the people that's doing. But I think, Gerhard, there has to be a mindset change. People can't come with a mindset that say, if you don't do this, then I will do this. That is not the right mindset. We must have a problem-solving approach, and we must have an approach that we can work together, that we can ensure that we're going to create much more jobs, and we can also grow our businesses through competitive processes, but also through social justice, that we take everybody on board.
Gentlemen, I would have liked to get a bit deeper into this issue, but we push for time. Thank you so much for, coming on to Radio 786 to, respond to the national minimum wage of 20 Rand an hour. It comes into effect just over a year from now. And, this has it emerged this week that even here in the Western Cape, in Uniondale, there was a farmer that was paying his workers between 6 Rand and 10 Rand a day. And in a 7-day week, that amounted to just under 100 Rand for the week.
The views that hit the news. NRA